The Star Wars Jedi Survivor trailer just came out on the Game Awards, showing off a little more of the story and a lot of new gameplay elements, so let's talk about it. First, if you don't know my opinion of Fallen Order, it is one of my all-time favorite games. I love third-person, story-driven action-adventure titles like Uncharted, The Last of Us, and God of War. I love the Metroidvania genre of exploration and unlocking new areas over time, and I love Star Wars. Combining all of those elements into one, yeah. That's like my perfect game, so please excuse me while I share my hype for Survivor. I do have some concerns about the upcoming game, and I'll talk about those as well, but now that we have had a solid look at what the sequel will be like, I officially cannot wait for the next Star Wars Jedi game. Let's start by talking about the story elements, because that's the focus of this channel. Unfortunately, there isn't a ton to talk about in this trailer, because it is more about showing off new gameplay mechanics and enemies and that kind of thing, but we do get to learn more about the mysterious man in the bacta tank. He might be an Ikani, a people known for their pale white skin and hair. After all of the speculation surrounding him, I'm glad to know that he seems like a new character. All we really know about him is that he was betrayed and either left or imprisoned to heal. I'm gonna guess he's a former Jedi to give the title that double meaning. Both he and Cal are survivors of the Order, but something twisted in this new character to make him work against the Jedi. It's possible he could be from the High Republic era, considering the gold robes we see him wearing, which would mean he'd have been left in stasis for hundreds of years. I'd be upset too. I'm very interested to know what his goals are. Most of the Jedi are dead and gone, so who is he focusing his anger at? Whatever he's up to, it would appear the mysterious tank man is working alongside a couple of bounty hunter-looking characters. One more humanoid and one very large alien. I'm wondering if the big guy we see a couple of times could be a Gendai, which would be very interesting and frankly terrifying. They are notoriously difficult to kill, so he could make for an awesome boss fight. Catching up with our heroes, of course we have Cal and BD1 who are looking great, and then there's Cere, who has changed a lot in the 5 years since Fallen Order ended. She looks like she's in an archive or library of some kind. It's reminiscent of the Jedi archives for sure, but I think Cere has given up on her original quest to restart the Order. I don't know what this place is, but it could be like a home base for us to return to. I'm a little concerned we don't see anything from Grease or Merrin. It's a little odd that it's Cal flying and then crashing the Mantis. Grease is gonna be mad at you, but I'm mostly worried about Merrin. I loved her story in Fallen Order, and the worst part about it is that she joins the crew way too late in the game, so I was excited to have her around for the entirety of Survivor. Star Wars is very much about found family, so it would be weird if the family Cal built in the first game were just gone. But past interviews about the game talk about Cal and the entire crew of the Mantis, so I have hope. Because again, while this trailer touches on some story elements, it is far more focused on showing off gameplay, and there are a lot of new, exciting mechanics to talk about. One of my biggest worries about Survivor was how they would continue to have a Metroidvania-style game after the events of Fallen Order. Most Metroid games begin with Samus getting hit by an electric blast or something, so she loses all of her suit's abilities, and then you have to collect them again. That works for those games, but that would not make sense for Star Wars. The first story is so much about Cal reconnecting to the Force to learn all these skills. He can't just bump his head and forget how to force push. Well, I am so glad to see a glimpse of how they are keeping the Metroidvania feel without relying on some contrived way for Cal to start from scratch again. What I'm seeing suggests we will keep all the abilities we learned in Fallen Order, and then we will reach new areas by unlocking new gear or maybe new passive force abilities. For example, we see Cal using animals to traverse the terrain. There are probably areas you can only reach through flight, so we won't be able to reach them until Cal learns to bond with the wildlife. But then all the animals could just be available to you. It doesn't have to take up a button on the already crowded controller. Or we also see Cal using new gear or lightsaber techniques to explore. He has an ascension cable that allows him to reach faraway objects, which is just a Star Wars version of Indiana Jones's whip, so obviously I love that. We see him using his lightsaber to slide down walls. All of that looks great. And really, all I'm trying to say is that I am relieved that I don't think Survivor is going to make us unlearn what we have learned. Instead, it will expand our skills and our gear. It will feel like the growth of a Jedi Knight instead of having to retread the same ground again. That was my biggest concern about the gameplay of Survivor, and now that concern is gone. Next, let's talk about combat. One of the biggest criticisms of Fallen Order was that combat could feel stale and repetitive. Game director Stig Asmussen has even agreed and said one of the focuses of Survivor was to improve on the combat system to make it more dynamic. In Fallen Order, Cal had two combat stances, the single blade and the double blade. The trailer already showed us two new stances, using two separate blades at once, and then at the end we saw the crossguard. Of course, you can still use just one blade. The trailer also shows Cal with the connected double blade at the very beginning. That's 4 stances already, and I think we'll be seeing even more because the poster for the game and Cal's action figure and the pre-order bonuses show off a blaster as well. So I think we're going to have a lot of different options when it comes to combat. If we look back at the first trailer for the game, we know Cal will eventually lose his lightsaber, or half of it, to some Powin senator on Coruscant, so I think that could be an interesting way to force players into trying out more combat stances, pun intended. I think each stance will be specialized, similar to the way the double blade in Fallen Order was better against several enemies and the single blade was better for dueling. Speaking of those pre-order bonuses, I want to take a step back from the trailer to mention that I think Survivor is embracing the fun of video games a little more than Fallen Order did. Do you want to look like Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, or Obi-Wan Kenobi while you play through the story? You can. I get the sense in the past Lucasfilm was a little more strict with stuff like that. Like, they would be worried it would put cracks in canon or immersion or something if Cal were dressed like another character, but I think it's just fun. Is it canon that Cal ran around the galaxy constantly changing his clothes and his lightsaber color? Absolutely not. But I think most fans realize that, and would rather be able to express themselves in more ways than just by changing the color of their poncho. Nothing against the pink poncho, I'm just glad to see more going on in Survivor. And there's not just more going on in customization, let's talk about the enemies. There are of course still stormtroopers and KX droids and many returning basic foot soldiers, but there are a ton of new enemies to get excited about. I perked up at the DT series Sentry droid from Star Wars Rebels, which is a precursor to the Dark Trooper from The Mandalorian, and then we see all kinds of Clone Wars era droids. We knew the B1 would be making a comeback thanks to action figure releases, but there are also B2 and BX droids. I'm glad to see so many droid enemies, because if I have a nitpick about Fallen Order, it's all the animal death. Killing animals without remorse and it refills your force meter, that is not in line with Jedi philosophy at all, but it's a game, you need enemies, I understand it, and I forgive it. That's why it's a nitpick. And I'm not going to pretend I didn't get very excited to see some of the new creatures we'll be battling, like a Wampa, but not in the snow. That immediately reminded me of the Cliff Wampas from Shadows of the Empire. This could be a callback to exactly that, just a Wampa that evolved on a different planet, and I loved seeing it ragdoll Cal around. There are other creatures that appear to be boss fights, and I'm cool with that, but I appreciate that Survivor seems to be finding a better balance between constantly killing animals and dismantling droids, and the use of animal life as allies goes a long way as well. Speaking of allies, we meet a new character named Bode on what I think is Coruscant. He seems like he'll help you out on occasion, similar to many of those other games I mentioned earlier. Uncharted has Nate and Sam teaming up, The Last of Us has Joel and Ellie, God of War has Kratos and Atreus. Maybe different planets will have different allies. Maybe Merrin could be an ally at one location. She played that role on Dathomir in the Malicos boss fight, popping in to shoot some Night Sister magic every so often. That would be sick to have that more consistently throughout the game. I think I'm about out of stuff to talk about, but so far I am filled with excitement. We've known this game was coming for a while now. I feel like I've been keeping it in the back of my mind so I can be patient and just wait, but this trailer has now made that impossible. I don't know how I can stand the next 3 months. It looks like it's taken everything I loved about Fallen Order and expanded upon it. Just more of everything. More gear, more force powers, more stances, the maps look bigger. Oh, and we're gonna get to go to places that aren't in the middle of nowhere. We've actually got some cities to explore. As a game, it looks fantastic. There is still a lot we don't know. Obviously, the story is very important to me. I loved the story of Fallen Order, so hopefully Survivor lives up. It's too early to really say much about that side of things because we know so little. I hope the sequel keeps a similar balance between new and familiar locations. There are still a lot of things to learn, but from what we've seen so far, I cannot wait to get my hands on the game, which is releasing March 17th, right in the middle of The Mandalorian Season 3 and The Bad Batch Season 2, and shortly after the Battle Scars prequel book, and only a few weeks before Star Wars Celebration London. So that'll be a mess trying to cover it all, but what a great problem to have. There is too much Star Wars coming. My plan is to probably play the game on my own first to review it, find Easter eggs, do some lore videos and stuff like that. Then I'll try to find time to stream it on Grandmaster difficulty like I did with Fallen Order. I know Molly wants to play it too, after she went through the first game earlier this year, so there will be no shortage of Survivor videos from us. Until then, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Survivor coverage, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.